to Appalachia Rising. When we started to consider the kinds of things that might help Appalachia grow and develop and become the wonderful region that many of us who live here already believe it to be, we thought it's time for Appalachia to take control of the stories about Appalachia. So much of what you see in the press outside of this region talks about the problems that exist here. We believe that there are problems here, but you've got to understand that there are solutions that are happening here that are fantastic, and those stories need to be told. We don't believe those stories are being told, and so we've decided to create this podcast, Appalachia Rising, to tell some of those stories. Today, on the first episode of Appalachia Rising, we're going to talk to Jared Arnett. Jared is the founder of an organization called SOAR, Shaping Our Appalachia Region. Jared's story is a tremendous story of a boy who grew up right here in Appalachia, and he is pouring his life back into this place. So please, stick around. Let me start off by saying this is Appalachia Rising. This is the inaugural podcast of Appalachia Rising. The whole intent, just let me back it up. By way of introduction, the whole point of what we're doing here is trying to bring forward narratives or stories from Appalachia by people who live here. You know, I think that often the narrative of what Appalachia is gets hijacked by people who don't have the best interest of this region at heart. And so you're one of the most interesting people that I've run across in Appalachia, and I thought it'd be good to interview you and to see, you know, what kind of stories and narratives brought you here. So let's just start with telling us who you are and what you do.
Oh, sounds great. So I'm Jared Arnett. I am, I do several different things. In a full-time capacity, I'm the executive director of Shaping Our Appalachian Region, acronym known as SOAR. Mm-hmm. And we're a nonprofit that started as a political initiative probably 5 years ago to bring the region together around a united, reimagined future for Appalachia, Kentucky. All about diversifying the economy and really moving the community. It was this bipartisan effort to say, you know, coal has been a foundation of our economy for decades, and we don't know that it's ever going to be back to what it was. And this united effort to say, we just have to do something different. Right. We invite these communities, our people of the region, to come together, give us your ideas, give us input and feedback. And I volunteered for like the first year of that, and they had the first summit in 2013 where 1,600 people showed up, and it just got legs, and they turned it into an organization. And I was hired as the founding executive director a little over 4 years ago. Okay. So that's my day-to-day. That's where we're at and what we're working.
So one of the things that we really want to do with this podcast is talk a lot about story. Yeah. So let's go back in time. You know, where'd you grow up? Were you from right here in Puckville, or did you come up someplace else?
So I grew up in Salyersville, Kentucky.
Okay, that's where my family's from.
Yeah, so about 45 minutes from here.
Right.
And I tell people all the time, I did not know. So until I was a senior in high school, I thought Pikeville was Coal Run. Because my family came, we would go shopping. We go shopping in Pikeville. We go to JCPenney, and Walmart used to be on that end. Right. And that's as far as we came. And when I was a senior in high school, I was in a friend's wedding, and I had to come up here and get fitted at Unique Boutique. It's a wedding place, bridal place here in Pikeville. I remember driving downtown and going, what is this? Where has this place been? I didn't even know there was a downtown.
What year was that?
That was 2000, I guess, 1999, 2000.
Wow, so the town had already undergone a major transformation at that point.
Yeah, it was in progress, and I started actually that same year, started taking a community education class here at University of Pikeville in music. I was into music and planned on being a music major, and so I came up here for a jazz improvisation class, and that's where I kind of made my first connection to Pikeville.
Wow, that's great. So what did your parents do growing up?
So they worked in state government.
Oh, okay.
They were in reclamation. They were the Office of Mining and Reclamation. So they were inspectors and worked on the reclamation side of the coal industry. So not directly involved in the coal industry, but definitely it was part of their business. And my grandfather was a coal miner out of Floyd County. Worked in the mines his entire life.
Right. deep shaft mines and surface mines?
Deep shaft, yeah. It was he was a deep shaft miner.
So how many generations can you count back in Eastern Kentucky? Have you ever
gosh.
done that?
Yeah, I have. I've done it several times, and through most sides of my family, it's generation after generation, except on, so my dad's side, my grandfather was originally from Magoffin County, the Arnetts. If you're in Magoffin, it's Arnett's.
Yes.
The Arnetts go back for generation after generation. He was in World War II. He left, joined the Army, and when he got out, he got a job in D.C. on the police force.
Okay.
So he worked in D.C. for 20 years. My dad grew up in Alexandria, Virginia.
No kidding.
Through the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
When my grandfather retired, he moved back to the home place
Right.
in Magoffin County. My dad was a senior in high school. And so I grew up in Magoffin County, but with my grandparents that lived next door, who had spent 20 years on the police force in D.C.
It's so interesting how so many stories in Appalachia have this generation or half generation where you leave for a little while and then come back.
Yeah.
What is it that draws you back? I mean, you've lived here your whole life, right?
Yeah, I left for maybe 6 months and lived in Columbus, Ohio. But other than that,
that's a
I've
big
been
mistake.
here.
Columbus, Ohio.
It only took me 6 months to figure it out. So, but yeah, I've been here my entire life. I've traveled a lot, but as far as living, I've lived here.
So, what is it that draws you back?
I've had somebody ask me once, said, why, we always talk about the next generation, and we talk about a lot how they leave, and they said, why are you here? And I say sometimes you choose the mountains, but sometimes the mountains choose you. There's some type of spiritual connection of just culture and place that just is a draw that says you. And I always felt compelled to try to make a difference, to help move the region forward. I'd been blessed with opportunities, and I just wanted to see, can I share that? Can I make some difference in the outcome of the region? So I don't know if there's any way to really describe it, but I think culture and the connection, and there's some spiritual connection, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So talk about that spiritual connection for just a little bit. Is it a connection to the place, or is it a connection to the people? Because I know you're a spiritual person too.
Yeah, I am.
So go ahead and talk a little bit about what that's like in your family.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of that. As I kind of made the transition from the Salyersville area to Pikeville, and I met my wife here in a class at University of Pikeville. She was from the Pikeville area. You realize, I'll travel and I'll spend a week in a town, and it's enough for me. I can't wait to get back. I think part of it's the geography, the mountains, the hills. It creates some form of safety that I just enjoy. But also, strangely enough, the opportunity that it brings. A lot of people see that there's no opportunity here, or think there's no opportunity, because there's not a lot of people. But honestly, with less people, to be involved in the work that I've been in, be working for a governor by the time I was at age 30, doing it, if I would have been in an urban area, there's hundreds of me, thousands. But in this type of opportunity, if you're talented and you've got a strong work ethic, you can really make strides in the region. So that was part of it for me. My faith obviously plays a part in it for me. I've just always felt kind of called to, led to try to do something, and I've always put my best foot forward to try to do that.
So just to kind of close up the personal side before we jump back into SOAR and your work, talk about your wife and your kids. Yeah. Because I think you got a brand new one right now, right?
Yeah. I do, yeah. So, outside of SOAR, I've got my wife. We've been married almost.
You better get this right, man.
On the spot. We were married in 2005. It is 2019. It'll be 14 years this year.
That's good math.
So I'm doing good there. But yeah, we met here at the University of Pikeville. Spent 2 years here on campus. Ended up transferring to Moorhead. Graduated from Moorhead, but loved our time here. And we've got a daughter that's 9. And just had a new baby boy that's a little over 2 months old now. So A little bit of a spread there, but it's kind of nice. The 9-year-old loves kind of pitching in and helping out. So,
Oh, yeah.
So we're having fun at home. My wife taught high school English here for several years. She's now kind of a full-time mom and volunteer. And I pastor a church in my spare time.
Oh, tell the name of the church, because there might be folks listening who want to come visit.
So New Beginnings Fellowship Church. It
Okay,
was
good.
A new church here in Pikeville, and have some faith-based ministries that I don't lead, but we're involved in, and have so many different volunteers and leaders who have stepped up. Also an entrepreneur and been involved in a guitar store and music industry for several years. So I'm a partner of Mountain Music Exchange, a guitar store here out of Pikeville, but we sell gear and equipment all over the country. We sell online as well as locally. So
Good.
that's kind of my world, and my family's been, my wife's a huge supporter, involved in everything that we're doing, and she's also connected to the region and believes in the work that we're trying to do.
Good, good. So now let's shift to SOAR for just a minute, because I think there are great stories inside SOAR.
Yeah.
So pick one maybe that was an early success for the organization and how they brought that to pass.
Wow. So I think we could kind of dive into a very specific story, but I think probably the biggest win at the beginning was this idea to build consensus about what the future of Appalachia is going to look like.
Right.
How do you bring all these diverse organizations and people and communities together, find common ground, everybody contribute ideas, and then build consensus around what are we going to do? And that's a difficult process to get through. And through SOAR, we were able to do that. It took us probably 2 to 2.5 years from the time it started to capture all that input, put it together in a plan, put it back to the communities and the people who helped give the input, and build consensus from the governor's office down to the grassroots in these communities, and say, here is our plan for the future of Appalachia.
So can you outline that real quick?
Yeah, so we call it the blueprint for a 21st century Appalachia, and it's got 7 goals. The first one is broadband, and I often say the other 6 are about what are we going to do with it, because we did 10 different working groups at the beginning.
Right.
Every session, if we were talking to a health clinic and how do we improve the health of a community, they said if we had better access to broadband, we could manage our records better in the cloud, we could do telemedicine, we need better broadband. If we were talking about tourism, they said we got to have Wi-Fi, we got to be able to promote our assets online. We need,
right.
If we were talking about small business, they're saying our new market is online, we need to be able to sell and upload things into the cloud. If we were talking about industrial development, manufacturers, now on top of their list is we got to be connected all.
Right.
So we said, this isn't our idea, this is the region. Every working group, the priority was broadband.
Right.
So we took that, made it goal 1, and said, here are the other 6. The second one is 21st century workforce. With this connectivity in rural communities, how does that change the opportunity? How does that change the way we educate and train the next generation of employees?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the world is different. So that changes the way we think about workforce. Third one is small business in the digital economy. How do we get more entrepreneurs saying, wait, our market doesn't just have to be my neighborhood or my community.
Right.
With technology, I can sell, maybe I'm a crafter and I can sell my product on Etsy to the world.
Right.
The fourth one is healthy communities and integrating how do we use technology to address the negative health metrics we have in Appalachia. Fifth one is industrial development. How do we find opportunities to recruit new industry and expand industry that's already here? The sixth one is around regional food systems and farmers markets, farm to school programs. And the seventh one is tourism. How do we create Appalachia as a destination? So that's the 7 goals. We say we got to work on concurrent, harmoniously. It's not do one then the other.
Right.
We have partners that are passionate about one of those areas. We need you doing that work. So it's this idea that we build all these independent organizations that are working toward a common strategic plan and producing outcomes, which is I say a lot of times when SOAR started, we were essentially put in charge of kind of fixing everything in Appalachia and given no authority and no budget. so it's through leadership. Like, you got to build relationships and partners that buy into the vision because they believe in it and say, all right, we're going to do things different. And UPIC is one of our partners, and you guys have done that over and over again. Said we're in this with you. And so SOAR is not just us. It's not just me. It's not just the organization. It's a movement of people in Appalachia.
And the thing about movements is oftentimes you've got an awful lot that is happening, but it doesn't really look like a whole lot is happening. And that might go on for 2 or 3 years, and then something just pops and everything starts to explode.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about all the feet that are moving like crazy on the broadband thing right now, because I know that's got a lot of action going on, and not people don't know what's happening.
Yeah. So early on, when we identified broadband as a priority, the state jumped in and said, okay, it's a priority, and Congressman Hal Rogers at the time had the vision. It's amazing. He's in his, what is it, his 30th year in office, or 30th term. And
That'd be that's 60 years. I don't even think Congressman Rogers is that old.
He is, and he is the champion for broadband connectivity in Appalachia, Kentucky. So he kind of had a vision, and he went to the state, and out of all this and our listening sessions, the state came up with a project called Kentucky Wired.
Yes.
And so there's a movement at the state level to do a $300 million public-private partnership to bring broadband to every community in Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky's first. We got some federal funding, and they're working on our circuit first, and it's making progress. At the same time, our local communities have to be thinking, how do we build out at the local level and build it out to every home and business? So we call that last mile planning. That's going to be different in every community. But we kind of work in the partnership with the Center for Rural Development and these local communities to say, analyze where you are, what kind of connectivity do you have? We know where we want to get to. Now we got to get a plan. It's got to be funded. You got to know who's going to build it, who's going to manage it and operate it. And like I said, in every community it's different. We have some counties that are already gigabit certified. They have fiber in Owsley County and Jackson County, fiber to every home. So
pretty small counties, though.
Yeah, really small county. Owsley County has 4,500 population of 4,500. So that's a portion of our work. We've kind of moved in the SOAR organization from talking about we just need broadband to beginning to share the stories and focus on projects that show how we leverage it and how it can transform a community. So that's really the biggest focus of our work at this point.
So pick one of those stories. A story where broadband has been leveraged and really helped to transform a community. Talk about that a little bit.
I think one of the core strategies that developed through SOAR, and it kind of existed before we even started our work, but it gained relevance and traction through SOAR, is this idea of remote work opportunities. The idea that the last statistic I saw said by 2020, 1 out of every 2 jobs will be worked remotely. So to think, if I'm in a connected community, what does that mean? And so we have a partner called Teleworks USA, and they build out hubs in a community, and they kind of become an intermediary for national companies that are hiring a workforce from anywhere in the country. We build a relationship with those hiring managers and say, we're going to help you identify talent in these small communities. You need workforce, we have people. We need jobs, you need people. We're actually bringing a solution to the country rather than saying, hey, we need come help Appalachia. So we started down that path, and at this point, there are now 8 Teleworks hubs in different communities. Owsley County is one of them. And we helped open that hub 2.5 years ago. And this is in Owsley County of 4,500 people, and over 200 people have gone to work. They actually had somebody from a neighboring county move to, but you can hear the county judge executive in Owsley County say, people are moving to Owsley County for jobs. And it's working for companies like Xbox, for Hilton Hotels, It's just Kelly Connect, all these major companies that are seeing this is actually progress. It's an opportunity. That's one hub out of the 8 hubs they've employed over 2,000 people.
Yeah, see, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Governor Patton is fond of saying that at the height of the coal industry, I'm trying to remember the number, I think he said there were 4,500 mining jobs in Pike County.
Yeah.
And to be able to say that regionally, I know it's a larger region,
Right.
but we already have 2,000 jobs in an industry that didn't even exist
Right.
5 years ago.
Right.
Where is the limit on this?
Yeah. So, early on in SOAR's work, I knew what we were working toward. About a year and a half in, you get to a point and I realize I'm working in an organization that we're trying to solve a problem. Eventually we should solve it and we should go home.
Right.
To go do something else. This big picture. There's been lots of people come before us in the last 60 years trying to solve the same problem. But I said, I want to see the number. What's the number of people that need to go to work to kind of solve the problem in Appalachia across all of our territory? And it was about 30,000 people. It's a big number. And then I got on, I came across this website called flexjobs.com.
Right.
It's like an Indeed, but for remote and flexible work. And they had a job ticker that said how many postings they had. And at that time, it was like 32,000 and something.
There you go.
I went, well, there we go. So I literally emailed the CEO of Flex Jobs and said, hey, we've got this movement happening in Appalachia with Teleworks USA. Send them the link. We need to connect. We believe we can. Basically, I said we want all those jobs.
Right.
And so
You don't dream big or anything, do you, Jared?
No. So she immediately replied, and within a week we were on a call with her. Within 2 months we were in D.C. at their conference with the director of the Teleworks hubs, meeting all these companies that post on their site. 6 months later, we had 12 of those companies in Hazard and Harlan County touring the hubs with commitments, with opportunities of thousands of new jobs over the coming years to be in these hubs. And then a partnership between Teleworks USA and Flex Jobs, so that if you're in a Teleworks hub, you get free subscription to all the Flex Jobs postings. And these are nursing jobs, they're education, it's accounting, it's any degree field. It's not just customer service.
Yeah, right.
There's just a whole spectrum of opportunity that's totally scalable. We need to build hubs. We need to keep building these relationships, and it slowly begins to. The local businesses in Booneville and Owsley County, the local restaurants, they can feel the impact that there's 200 people now working in that town.
Right.
With full-time jobs and benefits that can afford to shop and buy more food. So it's a catalyst for transformation for sure.
Well, see, this is one of the exciting things to me because, for the last decade or so, we've had a significant outward migration. And actually, I mean, you and I are both evidence of this because our families, my family in the 30s, your family more recently than that, had to leave for a while to find work so that they could live. And now we're seeing this inward migration of folks coming back or figuring out that Appalachia is a great place to be and moving here. So, what would you say to someone like that who's maybe sitting in Columbus, Ohio, who's thinking, gosh, maybe there's a job down in Appalachia somewhere? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think there's a quality of life here that's incredible.
I do too.
And you have a lot of the urban amenities now happening in towns that are rebuilding their downtowns and creating this creative space built around arts and opportunity. At the same time, you can hike in the mountains, you can be on the lake, you can be in the rivers. There's beautiful scenery. And with connectivity, there are people, this is a kind of a trend. People really want to move out of the hustle and bustle of the city life.
Yeah.
And so I think we've got a great opportunity for a startup community to attract kind of young talent, professional talent. I think that's a real niche there. And if you want to be in a place where you can be a big fish in a small pond, if you will, and not just benefit for yourself, but make a difference in the world. This is the place to be.
So let me ask you a couple questions related to place. So when was the last time in Pike County that you were in a traffic jam?
Oh, I can't think.
That's kind of what I thought your answer would
yeah.
be. When was the last time you were in Pike County that you had to wait more than 5 minutes in a line in a store?
Yes, no.
Maybe
Right,
Christmas?
Right, yeah, maybe Christmas.
Maybe, because Walmart gets kind of crazy at Christmas.
It does.
But certainly not a grocery store, right?
No.
When were you in Pike County that you had a hard time finding what you needed to make a meal?
No, it's pretty easy.
Food City's pretty good about that.
Yeah.
Walmart's pretty good about that. Even, what's the other one here in town?
Velocity.
Velocity Market. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know why
local
I forgot that
markets.
name.
Yeah.
I go there
Yeah.
every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I've never had problems
Right.
finding what I need
Right.
here in Pikeville. The only thing I sometimes have trouble finding is size 14 shoes, and that's really my own issue.
That's true.
So that quality of life is different than what it is in big cities.
Yeah.
You know, where now I think the average commute is almost an hour.
Right.
And
Right.
most of the time that's 10 miles.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
It is crazy.
Yeah, and I visit those cities and I think, gosh, I don't want to live in a place
Just
like
spend
this.
your time behind the. I live 15 miles away, and got a 20-minute commute or something, and it's just there's nothing like it.
Yeah, there really isn't anything quite like it. All right, let's take a little break, and that way you can get a drink of water, because
Okay.
I think you probably need a drink of water.
You're listening to Appalachia Rising, presented by the University of Pikeville.
Welcome back. You know, it's nice to take a break every once in a while so we get a chance to get a drink of water. So one of the things about Appalachia that's been a problem in the last, probably the last 15 or 20 years has been a lot of folks who have gotten addicted to opioids and prescription pain medications and a variety of things like that. And if you read Dreamland, I don't know if you've had a chance to read that book yet, but he talks about the pill mills that existed up on the Ohio River and then down in Florida, and how State Road 23 was sort of a traffic line for that. And that's right through the heart of where we live. But the thing that thrills me about this story is that solutions for Appalachia are growing out of Appalachia.
Yeah.
And you are directly involved in one of them with SOAR. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mentioned earlier that one of our goals is around healthy communities,
Right.
and reducing the impact of the opioid and really substance use disorder in general. Addiction has been kind of a common theme throughout our work. We actually have 2 CDC public health advisors that work out of our office, kind of driving those collaborations within the region. So we have full-time staff on it. So we came across this organization called Addiction Recovery Care, a local company. Actually, the CEO and founder was a recovering alcoholic himself, and wanted to find a way to give back. He started a nonprofit originally called Karen's Place, a residential center for females who were coming out of addiction, and it expanded into his company he has now, Addiction Recovery Care. And they have several different residential hubs and outpatient clinics across the region. But they do things a little bit different. And I went and toured Karen's Place several years ago. First came across them around that time. They invited me to come up and tour Karen's Place. And they kind of shared their vision that they had to not just do inpatient treatment, but to create kind of a continuum, a pipeline of opportunity, because we found that the greatest challenge is when people come out of treatment, they may have gone through detox and they've gone through 30 days or 60 days of treatment. They can't just come back out into the system and in the social network that they were in before.
Right.
We live in a place where it was difficult to get a job beforehand, but coming out, they've usually got some criminal record,
Right.
and the stigma that comes with addiction. So how do we create opportunity? They call it crisis to career, this kind of continuum of opportunity, coming off the street in a crisis. And so they had this vision to start doing workforce training and connect to employment opportunities while people were going through treatment. So I was able to connect them with Jeff Whitehead, who runs the Workforce Innovation Board in Eastern Kentucky. And I called Jeff. I said, you need to go visit Karen's Place. He went and toured it. And, he called me, he said, man, you made me cry. He said, why'd you send me up there? And so they forged this partnership where Jeff had some workforce dollars that were available to support people who were going through recovery to get training. And Addiction Recovery Care, in their expansion, they needed peer support specialists,
Right.
which is essentially someone who's gone through addiction, they've gone through recovery, they've been clean a year, taken a 40-hour class, passed a test, and now become essentially a licensed counselor to help counsel the next group of clients, patients that come through. So we created this program called the Peer Support Academy. Addiction Recovery Care put it together. So it's several weeks of training, and these students are gaining college credit hours while they're going through it. While they're going through treatment, once they get clean a year, they're guaranteed a job at Addiction Recovery Care. So this is not only solving a problem, they've grown from about 150 employees to over 400 employees.
Wow.
And over a third of them graduated from their programs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just in the peer support side. Their director of HR graduated from their program, and their corporate team. You meet one after another, they're sharing their story. I've been clean this many years. It's just an incredible organization. And so we are now connecting them with the new employers that are open industrial projects.
Right.
To do the same type training pipeline, but with these second chance employers who've come, if they need welders, if they need mechanics. We're now doing this workforce training while people are going through addiction. And we've also created community coalitions where you see judges, you see kind of the stigma turning from, we can't just arrest people who are addicted and put them in jail and expect them to change their behavior. It really is a disease. It really needs treatment.
Yeah.
We're really getting our arms around that and how to solve it. And as we bring economic opportunity, we have the partners in place to give people the spiritual, the mental, the physical support they need to get into recovery. And if we can bring economic opportunity along with it, we really think we've got a chance to do what felt hopeless probably 5 years ago,
Right.
to move through the problems we've been facing. Again, it's all people working together. We need new job opportunities at the same time. So we talked about teleworks. We are now working on building a residential treatment center and a teleworks hub together.
Oh, that's a great idea.
These are the type of
yeah.
innovations that when you get these people together who would normally never talk, but through SOAR, we just focus on this cross-sector collaboration. They just start coming up with these ideas, and then we kind of call the meeting, get them together, make introductions, and they take it and kind of run with it. So that's pretty neat. Another scalable, that's transformational, and those are the type of things we like to get involved in.
Yeah, and it's scalable inside Appalachia, but it's also scalable outside Appalachia because, we hear a lot about the opioid problem here, but it's a huge problem in every medium-sized city in the United States. And really an unaddressed problem in a lot of those cities. And they ought to send some folks here to learn what we're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, we've been at it for a little bit longer because we identified the problem a little bit sooner.
Right.
So I think there are great things to learn from that center.
Yeah.
So tell me again where the headquarters is and who the leader of the organization is, because if people listen to this, they might want to reach out to them.
Yeah, Addiction Recovery Care centers, they're based out of Louisa, Kentucky.
Okay.
CEO is Tim Robinson.
Tim Robinson.
Founder, yeah. And you can find them if you just search Addiction Recovery Care Louisa, you'll find their website. They do a wonderful job with intake. 800 numbers, you can now chat. You can get on their website and chat with people that, it's just so much good stuff happening, because even on the healthcare side, our hospitals, they had protocol. If somebody came in the emergency room and they were having a heart attack, they know what to do when somebody's coming in with a heart attack, the response.
Yeah.
If they have somebody coming in who is overdosed, who is in addiction, we've just struggled for a long time to know, well, what's the next step for this person?
Right.
Do we give them Narcan? We save their life, but then what?
But then what? Right.
And so now we've partnered them with Addiction Recovery Care. They're writing new protocols. They're putting peer support specialists in emergency rooms, so that they're moving people from the emergency room into treatment. There's just that whole kind of thing that's happening under the umbrella of the work that we're doing. It's not going to make headlines, but I can tell you story after story of the individuals whose lives has changed, and it's powerful work.
You know, given the size and scope of the problem of opioids in the nation, it probably ought to make headlines.
Yeah.
Because the way that we're moving people through from addiction into the workforce is something that's truly innovative all around the country.
Yeah.
And we need to tell that story.
Yeah.
It is one of the things where Appalachia is rising.
Right.
It's the whole point of this, gathering narratives into one place so we can show the world, look, there are great things happening here, and you need to look here for solutions.
Yeah.
Because we really do have a lot of folks who are that creative.
Absolutely. I love Jeff Whitehead's quote. I use it a lot. And again, he's with EKSEP, the director there. But he says, Eastern Kentucky is not a problem to be solved, we're a solution to be discovered.
Exactly.
And I think that pretty well sums up our work.
Yeah, I think it does too. And it's just simply a great story.
Right.
So we've got another success story of a more traditional kind of business that moved in on a business park that's about 5 miles outside of town.
Yes.
So can you talk about them a little bit?
Yeah, we can talk about them. Silverliner is the name of the company. It's an expansion of an existing operation that's been here for years, and they've kind of been in the transportation business, and so they had a lot of trucks and tanker trucks, and identified the need. They essentially tried to order one. They needed to upgrade a few of their fleet, and it was like an 18-month wait list.
It was, yeah.
So being an entrepreneur, he's like, okay, well, that sounds like a market opportunity. And so he began to put partnerships together to start to essentially assemble these trucks here in Appalachia and sell them all over the country. And so he's done it. They've built, I think, 5 at this point, sold several of them. They are finishing up their new building at the industrial park here in Pikeville, and going to employ over 100 people. And so that's the homegrown companies, the people who are putting their own investments in and taking risks. You know, it's not a guarantee.
Right.
No business is a guarantee. I say all the time, we need people who are taking risks not for a profit, but to make a difference. That's kind of our network of, not that a profit is a bad thing, we want them to make money and move forward, but we really align with people who when their heart is in it. When, if we can make money, we want to do it, but we want to help the community at the same time. Yeah. And he's one of those guys that just kind of stepped up and took a risk and said, you know what, I'm going to try something. And that is SOAR. He is SOAR, shaping our Appalachian region. That's an entrepreneur saying, I'm going to do my part. I'll take a risk in a new venture, and we're going to hire some people, and we're going to make a go at it. And so we've supported him as much as we can through the process, help him connecting to workforce opportunities and partners. And then promotional things, you know, we last year's summit, we put one of his tanker trucks on the floor.
That was pretty impressive.
Of the summit to say, and we try to say all the time, you know, last year this was an idea, and he got the idea from a summit. He said he came to it, and he kind of got inspired, thought, you know what, I'm going to do something. And next summit, there's a tanker truck on the floor.
Right.
That's the type of things, we've said from the beginning, one of our core programs of work is to promote and inspire Appalachia, Kentucky. And if we can bring hope back to people and just inspire some entrepreneurs and leaders to not give up, you can't really measure that, but boy, it's impactful.
You know, one of the things that I've always been impressed with about this place is the power of the narratives that we have here, the ways in which the local people will talk about stories of persistence and grit.
Yeah.
And those kind of things, they live here. They are embodied in the people who live here.
Right.
You know, and I mean, I can remember my own grandfather talking about things that from his boyhood here in Appalachia and what that was like for him, and growing up on a farm, and, you know, inspiring the workers on the coal trains that he used to work for. And, you know, those kinds of stories just live. And I think that's the point of what we want to do with this podcast, is help people to see that there's great workforce here, that there are people who are trying to solve our problems here, so that we can continue to move forward.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about healthy communities. We talked a little bit about the broadband initiative. Tell me a little bit more about the local food movement that you're seeing develop here.
Yes, so obviously there's, in our far eastern counties, there's really never been kind of large-scale commercial agriculture.
Right.
We just don't have the topography for it. Obviously, my grandparents grew up, we farmed. We had a garden, and it was enough to take care of our family and give some neighbors. Tobacco, at certain stages of our history, has been a kind of a crop that was, a lot of people kind of did it on the side and made extra money doing it. But for the most part, agriculture has not been a core commercially viable business. So what we've tried to do is identify the opportunities to help commercialize it. So not necessarily teach people how to grow. For the most part, we know how to grow tomatoes and farm. What we struggle with is, well, how do I make money doing that?
Yes.
So we think if we can help people identify ways to make money doing it, they'll go out and do it. So a couple of those strategies, one has been around farmers markets. We've tried to help local communities fund and build up their farmers markets so that there's a place for local farmers. Again, most of the time probably extra income, nobody really doing it for a living, but a way to generate some extra income in the communities. And then some innovative programs like Farm to School. So how do you take the local cafeteria and connect them with local tomato producers, vegetable producers, so that they're buying locally instead of from wherever, a distributor. And we've had some of that success in Hazard and Perry County. They're now buying a lot of tomatoes from local farmers. And there's obstacles around that. A lot of it bureaucratic or red tape, or you got to have permits and certified, and you're feeding kids tomatoes. You can't just go find them out back and start feeding. There's some health concerns.
Yeah, they have to go through an inspection process and make sure that they're all certified.
So it's a little difficult, but there's been a lot of good work around that. The other idea has been to build out, and it's not really fully developed yet, but people are working on it, some type of co-op, so that if you are producing tomatoes, you don't have to go out and sell it yourself. You're all together in one group that's selling everybody's tomatoes and going out to the grocery store chains and restaurants, because a lot of our farmers don't have time. They're not salesmen, they're farmers. Right. So that's being kind of fleshed out, and that's really been the extent of it. But again, we kind of focus on the commercial, the business side of it, and feel like if we can figure that out and give people opportunity, we got great partners with the extension agents and people who train and teach people how to farm. Right. And then canning, we've done some community kitchens. That's the other thing, is how do we do value added? How do we make, Grandma makes the best salsa. Right. How do you package that? How do you make it so that she's got a website or it's in the chain? That's the value added side of food is an opportunity as well.
Yeah, so it's the whole commercial kitchen and certifying it as being clean.
Yeah.
So then you can market that product either online or in a store somewhere.
So you can go in and you meet all the USDA requirements and you can print labels, and again, there's red tape and work behind that. Right. But if you can do that in a centrally located spot that has staff that can help anybody that comes in, then you can very easily move from making it at home to kind of making it on a commercial scale and see if there's a market for it.
Yeah, well, that's good. I know we've seen Charlie Pinson, I think, is doing something with jams right now.
Yeah.
So there are things that are evolving there. One of the things, and I don't even know if you're aware of it, is the program that's happening out at Shelby Valley right now. Yeah. Teaching kids how to grow butter lettuce, which is kind of a high-end lettuce product. Okay. In a box container.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is a partnership between the university, the high school, and App Harvest. Yeah. Which is a business that thought they were going to be able to land here in Pikeville, but ended up near Moorhead. Right. And I think they've got 30 or 40 kids learning how to grow 1,000 pounds of lettuce a month. Right. In these containers. Yeah. Under UV light and with water sources and everything.
Yeah. Again, we're talking about local foods, and everything I've said is technology's been kind of the key component that makes it viable.
That's right.
So even with App Harvest, they're an ag company, but it's high tech, and it's about connectivity. And and even the local farmers markets. We've created programs where they can now take SNAP or EBT. So,
That's right, yeah.
So you're playing on the healthy community side as well. You're trying to help people eat healthier. We kind of coordinated this partnership up in Letcher County where, and this was a unique opportunity. They called it Pharmacy with an F.
That's right, down at the, what's the name of the community health center down there?
Mountain Comprehensive.
Mountain Comprehensive Care,
yeah,
that's
so
right.
They did a program where they got some grants, and their primary care physicians started writing prescriptions for healthy food for people who had high A1Cs, and so they got vouchers to go shop at the farmers market.
Yes.
And so they take these vouchers, exchange it for money, they buy local produce, and it increased the farmers market, their sales last year from like 20,000 to 120-some thousand. And so out of that, Mountain Comprehensive Health Corporation, they got a grant to do it, so they needed to measure their outcomes. Well,
right.
Writing this, so we connected them with BitSource, the local software company, who build out the technology behind the scenes and the database to create this communication tool between the farmers market, the clinic, and UK, who was doing the research.
Right.
With a local software company being built out by retrained coal miners.
Yes.
I mean, there's really no epitome of all our goals and stories than that. That's what we want to see happen.
Yeah, and we'll have one of the founders of BitSource on a future podcast. We've already talked to him.
Great.
To come and talk to us about the whole project of retraining coal miners.
Yeah.
To be able to write code and then to work as high-tech programmers, basically.
Right.
But that's another great story that we could probably spend an hour on another time. So yeah, and the pharmacy thing, which I love, it's PHAR. So it's not. It's F.
FAR.
It's a pharmacy, like farm.
Right.
Yeah, and I think one of the outcomes, because I talked to one of the researchers in this about 6 months ago, and they've seen decreases in A1C and improvement in diabetic health.
Right.
And again, here we have another program that's being designed and developed in Appalachia that urban America should stand up and listen to.
Right, absolutely.
Because urban America has as much diabetes in a lot of these big cities as we have here.
Yeah.
And being able to prescribe healthy food, and then giving people a means to go buy healthy food instead of just going to your favorite fast food place, and it's a great idea that's rising out of the mountains.
It is, absolutely.
The rest of the world ought to pay attention to it.
For sure.
So we've hit a few things inside the 7. What have we missed?
Let's see. We talked about industrial development and talked about small business, workforce, tourism, maybe.
Tourism. Let's talk a little bit about tourism.
Yeah, so,
how's SOAR working with tourism?
So part of our tourism goal, the goal is really for Appalachia to become a destination. And we feel like for that to happen, there's got to be some pretty significant private sector investment. We've got kind of the natural place-based assets. We've got the mountains. We've got the kind of the opportunity here. But it takes somebody to come in and build some type of destination attraction that's big enough to create kind of a catalyst.
Right.
So we've worked on several different projects around that. One is actually on the more southern end down in Bell County with the Appalachian Wildlife Center.
That's right.
Where we kind of coordinated with them and helped them get what was originally intended to be an industrial park, which is now going to be an Appalachian Wildlife Center with a reserve and a driving trail. And we helped them coordinate and get several different federal grants. They got some ARC grants and AML grants. But SOAR doesn't do anything in and of itself.
You put people together.
They led it. Like it's all coming up from the ground up. It is when we find leaders who have an idea, we have the capacity and the relationships in the network to just help them move it to the next level.
Right.
So that was really led by David Ledford and the foundation, Appalachian Wildlife Foundation. But they were going after it, and we helped connect. And now I think they've raised their entire capital budget now. They've bought the property, ready to begin construction. I don't have all the numbers in front of me. It's kind of built after a similar facility that does some elk viewing and things up in Pennsylvania. This one's bigger, it's closer to, easier to access from an interstate. We think we have a lot going on this side. The one up there is totally outgrown all expectations and foot traffic there. So it's around the communities of Pineville, Middlesboro, and even Harlan County. And so Pineville's looking at new hotels, looking at new lodging, and Pineville's done an incredible job of kind of rebuilding their downtown, doing downtown incentives. All their storefronts are full now.
Yeah, I've been down there. It's beautiful.
It's a really neat story, and partnered with this and the traffic that's going to bring, we think they've got some good opportunities.
So is this a park that will have elk in it? Is that the
It
plan?
will, yeah. They'll have elk that you can drive around. There's you can do bird viewing. David knows all. He can really speak to it in detail. The number of different bird species. They think they'll have bird watching is pretty big.
It is. It's a big industry.
And so there's several different species of birds that come through there that don't go anywhere else, or they're not all in the same place like that. So there's some unique features there. Also a huge educational component.
Right.
Around the Appalachian wildlife. They're going to have a huge auditorium, and they're going to bring schools to the site and do educational components. Again, it's going to be high tech. They're going to have an app. You're going to be able to watch while you're going on the driving tour. Somebody can walk you through it. Videos. They've got the same vision. So again, we're saying we got to be connected.
Right.
No matter what goal we're talking about, connectivity is kind of the key, the glue that holds it all together.
When we moved back to Appalachia a little over 3 years ago now, my wife and I were surprised driving down the road to see signs that were elk crossing signs.
Yeah,
We expected white-tailed deer because there are deer everywhere.
Right.
We expected bear because we know there are bears here.
Right.
But we didn't expect elk.
Yeah.
Do you know the history of that? Can you talk a little about the reintroduction of elk
I can
to this
talk
area?
a little bit about it. I'm not sure when it happened. It's not been 5-10 years ago, 10 years ago maybe. And they reintroduced elk to the area, and now it's one of the largest herds in the country.
Well, certainly east of the Mississippi.
Yeah, definitely east of the Mississippi. And there's several different, I know you can go down around Jenny Wiley and you can pay for the elk tours. They'll take you out on a bus, and you can go up on former mining sites. And I've been up seeing 30 or 40 and at one time, and it's pretty incredible.
They're an impressive animal.
They are.
Yeah.
I think that's been a big deal for the region, and a big draw. Growing up here and kind of living around it, you just kind of see it and you take it for granted sometimes.
Right.
Probably the Red River Gorge is another example of that. The Breaks Interstate Park is another example of things that, growing up here, my family reunion was always at the Breaks. I just thought it was a place we went. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty impressive place on a national scale.
It is.
Along with the gorge and all the mountain climbing and rock climbing that happens there. So kind of being able to see that from an outside perspective is pretty important to understand how to kind of capitalize on it and create opportunity with it.
Yeah, and that whole tourism component, I think, is what will begin to draw people from the outside into Appalachia or back into Appalachia when they realize how much of a wonderful resource we have right here, and it's just in the backyard.
Yep.
You can come back and do what you need to do right here.
Yeah, and we get a lot of, in each of these areas, I think before SOAR, probably each group, people were working in education, they were working on tourism, but kind of everybody felt like their goal, their area of work was the most important. Like, we have to, education is the solution to Appalachia, or we need to be the next Gatlinburg.
Right.
Or we got to recruit a Toyota, That was what you consistently heard. And I think what we've tried to do is say, actually, it's all of that.
Yeah.
Actually, any one of those doesn't take us to the finish line.
Right.
But we have partners that are passionate about each one, and we've all got to be working all these together. We kind of lined the goals up 1 through 7 with what we felt like was had the most potential for transformation. So broadband's 1.
Because it affects everything else.
It affects everything else. Workforce development, this remote work when there's 30,000 jobs out there, and kind of retraining mindset, the small business, health, community. Tourism is good in and of itself. It's probably not enough to create actually the biggest benefit about tourism work and rebuilding downtowns is it actually creates a livable space that the next generation wants to live in.
It does. It creates lifestyle. So
Right.
when you're coming back into an area
Yeah.
and you want certain things about the place that you live, tourism helps to add all of those things in.
It does. And so that's our work. We launched a website last year called there'safuture.org that kind of capture a lot of these stories, so people can get on, they can see the plan, they can see who the partners are, and read and see the proof of different projects as they come online. It's kind of a consistent impact report of things that are happening in the region and sharing those stories. So we'd invite people to check that out. You can always see the most updated work that we're doing and connect with us.
Very good. There'isafuture.org.
There'isafuture.org.
I recommend anybody who's watching or listening, go check that website
Yeah.
out, because it really is impressive,
Yeah.
all the things that are happening in Appalachia.
Yeah.
Well, Jared, thanks for coming. I
No
appreciate you
problem.
being the first guest on this
Glad
podcast.
to be here. Appreciate the invitation.
And we'll hopefully continue to tell stories from Appalachia, because the rest of the world needs to hear what a great place this is.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of Appalachia Rising. For more information on this episode or others, visit www.upike.edu/Appalachia Rising.